Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. In this episode, we're breaking down the single biggest root cause behind almost every failed elk season: not understanding elk movement. I don't care what unit you hunt, how much you train, what tag you drew, or how strong your calling game is. If you misread elk movement, seasonal movement, daily movement, or pressure-based movement, you are always one step behind. And when you're behind in September, the odds stack hard against you. Every year, guys message me saying the same thing. I scouted hard, I had them patterned, I watched bulls in that basin all summer, and when I showed up in September, everything was empty. Or I was into elk early, then they vanished overnight and I never found them again. Or the classic, we located a bull 3 mornings in a row, then nothing, like he teleported. Elk obviously don't teleport. They don't disappear. They move with purpose. They shift with pressure, and they adjust to the wind cycle. They pivot instantly when the herd dynamic changes, and they rarely stay in the same pattern once human presence enters their world. Today, we're going to break this down in a way that rebuilds the entire foundation of how you approach elk behavior. We're going to cover why bulls vanish from glassing spots, why they go nocturnal faster than most hunters realize, how pressure forces them into security cover, and why most hunters spend September hunting where elk were instead of where elk are. If you felt like elk movement kept you off balance this year, like you were always half a step too slow, this is probably the reason your season didn't work out. So let's get into the truth about elk movement. In section 1, we're going to talk about why bulls vanish from glassing spots. One of the most frustrating parts of elk hunting is watching a basin that was loaded in August or early September suddenly go dead, silent, and empty. Guys treat this like some mysterious phenomenon, but there's nothing mysterious about it. Bulls vanish from glassing spots for one primary reason: the pattern you scouted was never a September pattern to begin with. Summer patterns are visible, sloppy, and food-driven. Bulls are feeding openly, bedding in predictable rotations, using visible trails, moving earlier and later, living lower on the mountain than people think, grouping up with other bulls, traveling with far less caution. You know, it feels stable, it feels predictable, it feels promising, but it's almost always temporary. Once September hits, everything changes. The food source shifts. Elk move from open feed to nutrient-dense shading feed pockets. They're not living in alpine meadows anymore unless pressure is non-existent. Thermals stabilize earlier. Morning thermals drop harder and sooner, which pushes elk off exposed faces into safer beds. Cow groups start influencing movement. If cows aren't in that basin, bulls aren't going to stay there long. Human pressure rises. Even just boots, glassing pressure, or road traffic pushes them from open basins into timbered side hills and fingered drainages. So when bulls disappear, they didn't leave the unit. They just slid into terrain that fits the phase they're actually entering. Glassing spots are incredible in July and August. They're less reliable once calling starts. And by mid-September, they're often vacant, not because elk left, but because their world shrinks into timbered pockets, benches, and dark north faces. If your season fell apart early, this might have been the first domino. In section 2, we're going to talk about why elk go nocturnal faster than a lot of guys think. Elk are naturally crepuscular, meaning most activity happens around dawn and dusk, but pressured elk develop a different layer on top of that. They learn to shift everything into darkness. Most hunters underestimate how fast it actually happens. So here's what triggers the shift to nocturnal movement: opening week pressure. The first spike in foot traffic and calling knocks them one layer deeper into cover. They're still in the same general area, but they're moving under the cover of darkness. Headlamps and drainages. Nothing educates elk faster than a string of headlamps marching into the same access corridor every morning. Bugling at 4 a.m. Hunters trying to locate bulls before daylight accidentally teach elk exactly when to shut up. ATV traffic. Noise patterns condition elk to feed earlier and retreat faster. A single blown stalk. A mature bull learns instantly. One wrong wind swirl and he'll shift his movement timing by hours. When people say elk went nocturnal, what they usually mean is the elk are still in the same ridge system. They're still feeding, they're still rutting, they're still moving, they're still active. They're just doing it at night. And there's the painful truth to this. A lot of hunters don't actually realize this is happening. They show up late to their glassing knob. They move too slowly in the morning. They expect elk to stay visible longer than they do. They think elk should still be out, but the window's already gone. Fixing this requires brutal discipline, being in position before the first hint of gray light, reducing morning noise, approaching bedding routes instead of morning feed, identifying escape trails, hunting the edge of security zones, not the edge of meadows. If the elk in your unit went quiet or disappeared early in the day, this might have been the culprit. They didn't stop moving, they just shifted the movement before you actually got there. In section 3, we're going to talk about how pressure forces elk into security cover, because when elk hunters talk about pressure, they often think about human pressure only, but pressure is multi-layered. You've got your human pressure and then other predator activity, but you've got heat, wind instability, scent contamination, cow stress, bull competition, noise patterns. Every one of those pressures pushes elk into more secure terrain. Security cover is the number one most misunderstood concept amongst new elk hunters. Security cover isn't where elk feed, or where elk water, or where elk are easiest to glass, or where trails look good, or where calling sounds travel well. Security cover is the place elk go when they don't feel safe anywhere else. It usually looks like steep benches, nasty side hill bedding pockets, north-facing timber, dark holes with a lot of deadfall, mid-slope shelves you'd walk past without noticing, timbered fingers between drainages, pockets shielded by swirling thermals. Those are not fun places for humans to hunt, which is exactly why elk love them. In pressured units, elk live full-time in security cover. They might feed out into openings, but they don't spend much time there and they return fast. Hunters struggle here because they expect elk to rotate between meadows, wallows, maybe high ridges, or more open terrain. But pressured elk rarely do predictable loops. They live tight, they stay dark, they move inside terrain that gives them a constant wind advantage. If you felt like elk vanished every time your unit got busy, this is probably why. They didn't leave the drainage, they dropped into the nasty stuff you avoid. In section 4, we want to talk about why hunters hunt where elk were instead of where elk are. This is the mistake that sabotages more hunts than anything else. It's the final domino, and almost everybody falls into it at least once. Hunters hunt last year's wallow, last year's rub line, yesterday's bugle, last night's tracks, the meadow they saw elk in earlier, the basin they scouted preseason, the drainages that look textbook, the terrain they like most. But elk don't care about any of that. Elk live in a dynamic world where pressure, thermals, wind, herd structure, food availability, and noise all change daily. Most hunters are one step and sometimes 2 or 3 steps behind real-time elk movement. Here's the truth a lot of people don't want to admit. Elk movement is fast, faster than hunters want to believe. A bull can shift 400 yards with one bad wind swirl, half a drainage overnight, a full ridge with a single human encounter, an entire basin after a single blown call setup. Movement is fluid, it's reactive, and it's situational. Hunters who expect elk to follow loops or stay in patterns set themselves up for failure. Elk don't follow loops. They follow safety. This is why successful hunters do 4 things extremely well. They adapt their plan the moment new information shows up. Not tomorrow, not later, right now. They track fresh sign with full commitment. If it's warm, soft, moist, or recent, they follow it. They abandon old intel instantly. Just because elk were there doesn't mean they are there. They hunt movement, not locations. Locations are static. Elk aren't. If you want to fix your season next year, learn to treat elk like moving animals, not stationary targets. You're not hunting a spot, you're hunting a pattern of behavior that changes constantly. The moment you shift into that mindset, you start finding elk you would have walked past before. Not understanding elk movement is the silent killer of September. It makes good hunters feel like they're failing. It hides elk in plain sight. It creates frustration, doubt, and confusion. But elk movement isn't random, and it's not mysterious once you understand what drives it. Elk don't vanish, they adjust. They don't get impossible, they get very cautious. They don't leave the unit, they move deeper into security. They don't stop running. They stop doing it where you can see them easily. If your season didn't work out because you couldn't stay with the herd, this is the blueprint for fixing that. Because once you understand how elk move, you stop chasing ghosts and start anticipating the next chess move before it actually happens. If this kind of deeper breakdown is helping you connect the dots and you want to take this further, that's exactly why I built Team Backbone. It's more than a membership. It's a way to sharpen your edge with exclusive tools, strategies, and a tribe of hunters who refuse to quit. Inside, you're going to get 20% off site-wide on all Backbone Unlimited gear, a member-only t-shirt shipped to your door every month, not available anywhere else, full access to the digital content vault of guides, checklists, fitness and backcountry strategies and mindset training, a private Facebook group with direct access to me and a community of driven hunters who live relentless, direct call, text, or email access to me for personalized advice on training, hunting strategy, or sharpening your edge, and automatic entry into monthly gear giveaways. If you're ready to train for the hunt, build a better system, and join a tribe that pushes you further, Team Backbone is waiting for you at backboneunlimited.com underneath the membership tab. Thanks for being here. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.